All right, everybody, welcome back to Bigger and Louder with Big Tony and John. I'm John. We got big Mr. Clean looking Tony over there. How was your Thanksgiving, bro? How was everything?
It was good, man. Happy Thanksgiving. It was just another holiday, as I suspected from our last episode. I got really looking forward to the sides. Can't say so much about the turkey, but again, the best part about my Thanksgiving always is the food on the preceding days with my Thanksgiving sandwiches, which I think I bragged about briefly to you. So that was kind of the highlight to my time. How was yours, man? Was it well? Was it as expected? Yeah. Did you fry your turkey? Did you burn your house down? I think you were frying a turkey, right? Like everybody else and all the mad people who burned their houses down this year.
Bird came out beautiful. My daddy, Big Carl D, was in town. So he was here with my mom. My brother came over to the in-laws. It was excellent. Everything was delicious. Our new sister-in-law, as I mentioned, was there with her family. So that was great. But yeah, it's fucking great. And now we got my wife's 40th birthday party, looking like it's coming up real soon.
Wow.
She hits the big 4-0, and
she made it.
They're down at Disneyland. So
Disneyland. That's your thing, man. You got to burn to the 30s, man. Take her out and go paint the mean streets of LA and leave your stamp there, man. Why are you going to go to Disneyland?
Well, we wanted to do like a ratchet dance hall 2000, 2004 our heyday type of party with like a DJ and everything at the house. But it's tough because then we got to invite a lot of her family, and then we can't have that type of party with that family around, right? So we said, all right, let's do Disneyland, and then we'll do like a nice dinner or something down the road. But yeah, for sure,
man. Listen, if you want to soiree her, here's what you do, man. Like leave the kids home with the grandparents, and you take her to Hawaii because you're pretty much closer to Hawaii than I am. So it's probably like a 6-hour trip for you. Go to Hawaii, go a whole week, no kids, and just cut loose, man. That's what I would do if I was you.
Well, yes, Anthony. Yeah, I think that's what we would all do if we could. It's just cut away from everything, leave the kids behind, and go party with our wives and do things.
You got a lot of family out there. It's possible. Just gotta make it happen.
I don't have any family on the islands. Anyway, I digress. I'd like to know what life has gotten like over the last year and a few weeks for a very good, very close friend of ours who's joining the show for the first time. Welcome in Mr. Robbie, the Beast Moretta. What's up, Robbie? How are you?
Rob, long time no see.
Gentlemen, good to see you guys.
Robbie, so tell us, what's it been like over the last year? Father of 2 kids, new house out in Long Island. Fill us in. Well, have you and the wife had any alone time in the past year?
John hasn't, so he's envious.
I can count on one hand how many times we've had alone time. We've gone to dinner a few times. The in-laws have been very gracious to us. My parents have been very gracious to us, but we don't get out too often. So I'll kind of leave it at that.
Well, as long as you get time to give them a brother or a sister on the side, not just fucking. We're not yet. I'm sure neither of you are thinking about that at all.
No.
Amen, bro. Amen. So other than that, man, tell us what's been up. Like, you're working in the city right now, and unfortunately, or maybe fortunately in this regard, we're talking about another shooting in America today, but this time not at a school, a CEO. So tell us, man, being in New York City, what's the vibe like over there? What's everything? What's going down?
Yeah, aside from the rats.
Yeah. Well, the rats will always be there, but yesterday was pretty interesting. I mean, I think so many people were interested in this story because it's like a scene from a movie. I mean, how many times do you see somebody in Midtown Manhattan get gunned down, assassin style? You all saw the video. It's just crazy to think that this can actually still happen today with all the cameras, all the technology we have, and it's a high profile person. And just for something like this to happen in Midtown Manhattan, 6:45 in the morning, one other person on the street from that video, it's just wild how everything kind of went down like that. Definitely the talk of the office, but I don't know. I mean, there's been so much news coming out from it.
Listen, people are fucking crazy, man. I mean, like, you don't have to fucking be a smart person just to go buy a gun and fucking gun someone down if you just fucking hate them to, especially in a fucking crime infested city like New York and like LA. But regardless, beside the point.
Well, yes, Anthony's a real country bumpkin living in fucking Yuppieville over in Connecticut. But the thing is, it's not. Yeah, if anybody's not caught up yet, the thing is that we're discussing here is the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, was shot yesterday in broad daylight.
Was it broad daylight? I saw the video. I saw the video. It looked like it was like an evening. I mean, I'm looking at it now. Was it really? I'm asking.
It was bright and early in the morning, right? It was early in the morning as he was on his way to his hotel for an investor relations meeting.
Yeah.
And, kind of sparks a question in my mind, and we've talked about this on our cast before, is this the let them eat cake moment? Like, have we crossed that line? Is this motherfucker Marie Antoinette? What do you think, Rob? What do you think, Anthony?
Look, like insurance companies have they're not on like everyone's good list. I mean, how many times do you hear about sick people getting claims, denied, pre-existing conditions? Is it a act because of a company that doesn't do great for the people? It's really hard to kind of get the motive behind why somebody would want to, gun him down. I don't want to pretend that I'm going to get into the assassin's mind as to, what the reason for it is. There could be a whole, list of reasons, but I think it's pretty well known that these insurance companies continue to reap profits on their type of business model. And, is this the result of something that is just not benefiting the public in any which way?
I'm going to go ahead and say, just to your point, Rob, that it's for anyone to assume this is like a random assassination. I think they'd be kind of pighead to believe that. Like, you don't just pick somebody out of like that kind of status in broad daylight, a well-known person in the insurance community, and just assume this was just like by some crazy fucking coincidence. Like, usually I think you pointed out, like, and I've been in healthcare for a number of years, is that he either was an employee of the company or someone who saw the dirty and the stick in terms of employee benefits from United Healthcare. And I think that's my mistake. And that's actually the insurance company he was the CEO for. So again, you got to realize, like, there's kind of like a monster on both sides of that spectrum, like the corporate juggernaut when working with something like that, but also seeing the downside of it from the employee's benefit perspective between premiums, deductibles, and so on and so forth, and what you pay out of it when you so little you get out of it as well. So I don't think this was like a random killing. I think this was definitely premeditated.
Well, I think number one, Anthony, it's an oxymoron to say random assassination. An assassination, by definition, is really like attacking a specific person and or killing a specific.
All right, let's say random killing, then maybe not random assassination.
Yeah.
That's
so, anyway. Just to point it out, like, I think it was a assassination, right? And Robbie and I, who go way back to college together, roommates, and we'll tell that story.
Yes.
Soko and Jack. I just think it's
McGee.
This long running story we have where it's like, hey, one day when it all goes down, we'll take our two tanks, you from Long Island and me from Cali, and we'll meet somewhere in the middle of the country. Like that fucking bullshit movie Civil War, right? We've always talked about that. And I think, like, this is, I don't want to say hopefully, but I want to say I hope that this at least wakens people up. I don't want to say that this is like the first domino, but do we feel like that? Because Anthony, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what you've seen from your inside scoop of the healthcare game there.
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen, Anthony, that you think would drive somebody mad like this? What type of practices would cause a victim to go after the head of a company?
Yeah, I mean, let's look at it from two perspectives. The first perspective, let's look at it from let's say they were an employee of the insurance company, right? I mean, maybe this person saw, a lot of nepotism, and maybe saw like a lot of, hush hush things on, and was a victim of just like, work, conflicts at work, maybe even gotten laid off for no particular reason. Just, I mean, that's that. I can't speak to that. No one really knows if that was the case, because I think the killer is still at large still, but they have an idea who it is. But if we were to assume it's on the other side of the spectrum, let's say, a carrier of the insurance that the employee benefits. I mean, listen, healthcare fraud is definitely, it's a real thing. It just really is. And a lot of times it's definitely a hodgepodge of a couple of factors. The first factor is usually right, like the amount of reimbursements that these services are really kind of worth and the insurance companies are going to give, and therefore it's forcing providers and healthcare providers to basically find ways to double dip without actually putting like a bullseye in their back. But on the other side of it is it's also the consumers who are also abusing the system, right? People who don't really take good care of themselves, people who don't necessarily understand like what it means to go to a doctor and to actually follow their instructions or to take care of themselves to prevent themselves having to go in and out of there. And there's always going to be another case scenario who just have chronic conditions or essentially chronic conditions that are just going to be everlasting. So it requires them to be in the system in so many different ways. It's definitely it's a very complicated business, healthcare. I wish I can say it's simple as running like a hedge fund. I wish I could say it's more simplified like running like a restaurant, but it's not, because people's health is really kind of at random. And this is kind of like where the debate of like whether we should have universal healthcare versus the private sector. It's still a hot debate, and no one really kind of knows where it really should go. I have my own opinions on the matter of the fact, but let's assume
we can talk about your opinions in a minute for sure.
Yeah.
Because I think like that's just what I'm getting to, right? And one of the reasons we invited Robbie in today is like his experience with some of these billionaire types, right? He works in the private sector, but he's rubbed elbows with a lot of billionaires and his day, a lot of 100 millionaires. Do these people give a fuck, man? Are they that detached? Are they making these decisions, Robbie? Like what are they doing? Like, are they just swinging their axe and not giving a fuck? What's your take?
You can't put like a blanket statement covering all of them. I mean, and I haven't really spoken to too many of them, but some get it and some don't. Some only know how to speak to other billionaires. Some only know how to sell. They have a certain, type of people that they speak to on a, daily basis, which can get them pretty jaded to how the real world works. And others are really tuned in to how everything's going, and they really get hands-on in the business from top to bottom, and they understand, where there's shortfalls and where there's not. So I think it's hard to just say that all of them just don't give a fuck, because out there, maybe people aren't going to actually believe this, but some do. I just want to go back to a point where they gunned him down on the day of an annual investor shareholder meeting. And this is one of probably the most important meetings of a company every single year. It's very planned. It's everything from who's flying in, who's attending, attendance lists and everything. It is very coordinated. So for somebody to, and I know you were maybe potentially alluding to this could be somebody working for the company or whatnot, it's really hard to hide the details of an event like this. It's very public. So this could really just be anybody. I wouldn't want to pin it and say it's somebody from the inside, but this could very well be someone that was hired from the outside. This could be, very well be someone who was personally affected by something. There could be some kind of grudge behind the scenes.
Scorned lover
information coming out.
If I take a bet, I think it was an inside job. I think an employee is the one, or a former employee would be the one to do it, because I think it's just unlikely that someone who has that kind of a benefit from their employer would just be at.
You don't think some liberal fuck, not like me, some fucking deranged liberal in this case?
John, very good. Well, John, I think you just committed yourself. So it sounds like you know something, John. Did you coerce in this? Are you the one?
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. It was very professionally done. Like, if you watch what happens, the shooter calmly walks from behind the car, no hesitation, arm fully extended, finger on the trigger. After the first shot, the gun jams, doesn't phase them. They fix it and they keep going. So, I mean, if somebody was directly affected by this person and they're also very well versed in, firearms, or is it someone that has a lot of money and can afford to have someone else?
That's such a great point. I love that. That's a hole we can go down there, because think about it like this. Like, we've seen movies like John Q, Denzel, one of Denzel's finest, I think, right? Where, his son needs a heart transplant. They're not giving it to him, and he holds the entire hospital hostage until they cut him open and use his heart, right? So I forget how that one ends, but yeah, but
no, they find they find the donor at the last second before
of course they rush the heart in, but I think it's like, to me, it, especially having kids, it's plausible that who knows, there could have been some recurring denial for some cancer patient, or something going on. Yeah. And then it's just like, what, I don't know what else to do. And like you said, it's hard to keep the details hidden, Rob. And there you go. Ex-service, somebody from the armed forces, knows how to use a gun. Bada bing, bada boom. I don't know. Like, I feel like you would use a revolver, and if you're going to do a hit, right? That's what Clemenza said. Use it like this because there's a less chance of jamming. So,
there was a suppressor on the end of that gun, so you can't get those in New York.
No, you can't.
Right. I would say this is definitely calculated.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a suppressor on that, like, and I'm a big gun buff, I'm a big, Second Amendment guy. Like, even in Florida, like, where guns are just basically, they hand them out at Walmart on your way out, a pack of bullets, is that we went to a shooting range one time, and I remember there was a gentleman there with a suppressor, silencer, and I spoke to him privately. I said, hey, listen, how'd you get this gun? He's like, listen, I'm ex-cop here in Florida, and this was not easy to get because I had to go through a whole system of paperwork that's get approved, time of showing my set. It's a lengthy process because they want to know, why do you need to conceal the sound of your gun if you're not going to do anything bad, right? And there's always loopholes as to why a consumer might need it. I would typically think you just don't like the sound of the gun at your age, therefore, but you like shooting gun. I don't know, but he basically said they're very hard to get, even in places that are very lax with guns. So you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no way possibly that this was just some random person found a gun somewhere, picked it up, happened to be in the right place at the same time, and then just went down. That's the biggest coincidence I would have ever heard in my entire life.
There's no coincidence. I think we can agree on that. I'm interested to see if they do in fact catch the guy. From what I was reading leading up into our recording here, they seem to have found some key evidence down the street with, maybe he grabbed the bottle. I don't know. I'm going to guess that, this fucking guy.
They found semen. They found semen all over the place.
They found semen. After he shot him, he came all over the sidewalk. That, what? In New York City, that's fucking likely, isn't it? Some guy just shooting a wad randomly.
If you're doing forensics on that sidewalk, you're going to find a lot of shit.
You are going to find a whole... Yeah. You're gonna find a whole mess, man.
Rest in peace, because I don't know if this man was a father or had family, but that to me is the one condolence that I will send, because I think everyone here knows that I'm very anti-billionaire and anti corporation at that. So I just think I hope that this was a one and done. I don't hope that this happens again. But Anthony, you brought up an interesting point earlier. And with President-elect Trump, I can barely say it. President-elect Trump taking office in January, the likelihood of any type of universal health care and is pretty much out the fucking window for the United States, anytime soon. But let's just talk personal opinion. You've been involved in it. We all have insurance here. What is your opinion, Anthony, on whether or not you believe we should have universal health care in this country? And Robbie, then we're going to you.
Yeah. So I think it sounds really nice to say everyone gets free healthcare, right? Like, it's a very nice, wonderful, magical land to say that you have to pay for healthcare, et cetera. But when you really get down to the nitty gritty of it, it doesn't work as well as you think it should. And there's for a number of reasons. First of all, is like, if you actually were to say anyone can get free healthcare at any point that you want to, you're actually saturating the market, essentially, where now the cost of those services, the cost of the machines to do the testing, et cetera, you're dropping the price of those down. So therefore, it's no longer going to incentivize doctors to go to school to learn all this encyclopedia knowledge, to pay them salaries and what they're worth. The cost, again, it's just going to basically it's gonna cut
So
basically.
are you telling me that like the basis of that, your opinion, and like sorry to get a little testy, but I'm gonna twist your nips a little bit. You're telling me the basis of your opinion is the costs are going to get too low for consumers, and it's going to drive doctors who only get in it for money out of the game?
Well, again, that's if you this is a capitalist country, right? It's a free market country. No matter how, again, we're not going to go on this route. This is kind of like for now, right? But again, this is a capitalist and a free market country, regardless if you think it should be a communist country or whatever. That's how it is. It's a free market country. The problem is with the healthcare system is that it's too highly regulated currently right now. Like, right? That's right. It is. The problem is that there's too many subsidies going around right now with the Affordable Care Act that happened, and they're trying. I forgot if it's still there or not, but here's the best way I can put it: is that there is no free market in healthcare, right? Like when you think of free market, okay, you think of like restaurants, you think of like businesses that the both of you work for, you think of a place where you can actually incentivize businesses to make competitive pricing. When you actually go to the doctor's office and you go and actually get a procedure, you're going to ask the doctor, hey, how much does this cost? And he's like, I don't know how much it actually costs, right? We have to go through the insurance companies before we actually do the procedure. We got to make sure it gets covered. There's all this preliminary stuff after you've actually been treated. It's kind of like you go to a restaurant, you have a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden you drink it, and they say, well, how much does this cup of coffee cost? I don't know. Drink it first, and then we'll tell you after, right? The problem is that it doesn't incentivize businesses to make care affordable, because the only way to do that is you need to have competitive pricing. Okay, that's the only way you're actually going to
I think you're talking in a couple circles here, so I'm going to let you think about that. We're going to go over to Rob. Do you think that that's the business model that these guys are following? Like, hey, we're going to keep prices competitive, aka high.
I didn't say that's what they're doing.
Okay.
I said this is what you should be doing. I'm trying to explain to you that this is what they should be doing, not what's currently going on. This currently what's going on is because of all the fraud that's kind of going on right now, other places, it's actually affecting other proper doctors and healthcare systems. So now the cost that they can get from an insurance claim for, let's say, a physical or let's say a follow-up has drastically gone down. So now what they're doing is they're actually recommending other services that aren't going to kill you, but also they can document and say how it was necessary, so they can basically make a little more money on the side, because their salaries out of private care providers is really suffering because they're at the will of the insurance companies. They're no longer paid by the hospital systems if you're talking private care or anyone off the grid. That's the problem.
It's been like this for decades. Robbie, I'd like to hear your take on this as a member of the American populace and a user of insurance.
Well, I mean, let me preface this by saying I don't really fully understand how the insurance world works, but the way I understand it is, don't we have all the best doctors in the world in this country because of, health insurance companies and how they're paid? We have the best facilities. We have the best equipment. We have the best research. There's a reason why all the best doctors in the world come and practice within this country. Now, is this a problem where is the insurance companies run like a, let's say, government, where contractors are going to bill extraordinarily high because they know that insurance companies have money and then they can get these claims paid out? When you go to a hospital in this country, it's sickening how you have to worry about, what's this bill going to cost me? If I have to go to the ER and I have to get stitches or I have to get an x-ray, what is this going to be out of pocket for me? What are they billing the insurance companies for? Is that bill that's going to the insurance company, is that fair? Is that valid? How is, like, Anthony, maybe you want to educate me, like, how does it work? Like, how can you justify if I have to get stitches by a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant and it's $600 and something? Is that the true cost of a couple stitches? Like, no. Is this a situation where a vendor or a contractor is just billing the most they possibly can because these insurance companies will pay it?
Right. That's why it all gets trickled down. Now, again, I can't say, but you basically are confirming what I just basically said. Like, it should not cost that much more money for stitches. Why? Because the insurance companies will pay it, and there's cost to labors and parts. Like you have to pay for the procedure. You're paying for the time of that doctor who went to school for 10 fucking years, who has an encyclopedic book of knowledge in their head and can extrapolate information more than any one of us here. So you're basically paying them the money that they're actually worth, just like we pay accountants, we pay people in law. You basically have an education that says they can do things probably greater than the average consumer out there. Right. But back to my point is like, here's another example to how we can get those costs down. Right. Here's an example. Either one of you wear glasses by any chance?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever had LASIK surgery?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you had LASIK surgery the first time around, how much did it cost you?
This was 15 years ago, about $4,000
Each eye?
total.
Okay. Before then, it was way more expensive, right? Because that's considered not like preventative health. Like you don't have a major healthcare crisis. That's more, you might even call that like cosmetic use because you don't want to wear glasses anymore, right? Now, what happens is that if you actually incentivize other optometrists or ophthalmologists to basically go in there and say, well, you're going to charge $4,000, I'm going to charge $2,000, right? Now, the other ophthalmologist is going to say, well, if he's charging $2,000, I got to charge $2,000. And you see the pricing actually go down because you're making competitive. It's not at the will of the insurance companies who have a fixed rate as to what they think that actual treatment is going to be worth versus what they have to pay out to the doctor and where it goes.
But this goes back to basic business. Like, are you charging $4,000 because you're trying to make insane margins?
Well, yeah, because at the end of the day, healthcare providers, and here's a number of them: ophthalmologists, dermatologists, dentists, oral surgeons. There's a lot of doctors who literally get into that side of the business because typically it's not really insurance heavy, because a lot of these practices you're not going to get a lot of people who are coming in for preventative health or chronic issues like cardiologists or anyone that it could be brain related, heart related, lung related, whatever. You have people who are coming in for more cosmetic needs that aren't really like life issues. They're more of a cosmetic issue and up and down that chart someplace, right? So if you think about it, if I'm going to chart, why do I need Botox? Why do I need LASIK surgery? Why do I need all these other
Plastic surgery?
It's not needed, but you can make a lot of money on it because you don't have to, because first the insurance aren't.
But let me go back to your example then, Anthony, because it's like we're talking about LASIK. This is a great piece for me because I have for years wanted to get it, but I've never been able to save specifically for that. I've never been able to just been like, here's my $4,000. Or like, I think out here, honestly, it still costs more than that, even 15 years later. I think it's like, well, maybe not. I think it's probably like $1,500 an eye. I got quoted about a year ago. It's like $1,500 an eye. So it came down about $1,000 at least, what the price I was at. You have saved, Rob, not only from your pocket, but from all the visits to your annual visit to get new glasses or get a new prescription and get your eye exams, all that insurance for getting the lenses and getting them, whether they be contacts or frames, and having them bill the insurance company. So that $4,000, and this is my argument here, they don't want to make that, and I think they call it like an elective surgery, right? That surgery part of your poor health, and they keep it elective because they want you to stick around with glasses and fucking frames. So every year you got to go back, and every year you got to cycle through, and every year you got to keep the contacts going. I spend like $400 a year in contacts, and probably in cash $300 a year in like lenses and frames. So I think it's like every year I got to change my shit. Would love to go in and just get my fucking surgery done and call it a day and never have to get it again. So I think it's all about greed. And, again, with the claim denials, and I'm not going to know the statistic, but I do know that United Healthcare was the highest rate of claim denial in the country. So like, I think this whole fucking game, dude, is about greed. And I don't think it's capitalist anymore. I think it's like an oligarchy, where all these agencies, even United Healthcare, is owned by the Vanguard Group and BlackRock. BlackRock owns private equity. It's a private equity firm. They own other insurance companies. These motherfuckers, and whether it's Johnson & Johnson, that conglomerate, or fucking Kellogg's or Post or anybody that's been sucked up by somebody else now. These conglomerates are owned by private equity firms. These are the guys that, if we talk too much about it, are going to show up and will disappear. Right? Like that's what happens with these guys. They run wars. BlackRock owns defense companies. So it's like, it's this whole circle jerk here that we're all just sucking the teat, marching the line. Even those of us who, throw our hands up about it are still marching in that line when it comes down to it. Until yesterday when somebody was like, nah, fuck it. Right. So to me, it's about greed. Anthony, well, let me ask you though. Let me pose it like this. One of the reasons, and you told me this, so I'd like to hear, your words and let everyone know. You told me the reason you left healthcare is because of the fraud where you saw the elderly get manipulated into receiving services and treatments that they didn't need simply because the provider wanted to bill insurance. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't necessarily witness it. Like, I wasn't in the room with the doctor and actually seeing verbatim what was going on with any of these people. But it's very simple. Like, the way in which whatever part of healthcare you work for, whether it's at the acute level, subacute, outpatient, whatever, you're going to be held to a entity that's going to dictate how much you can charge at the rate you can charge. Because that's just the system where, it's just the system, for example.
That's not capitalism. That's not free market. So like that, and that's where it's like,
well, yes, I agree with you.
It's all a fucking game, because free market would say, hey, maybe we have a license, you got to get licensed. Yeah. If we want to, continue that, I think it's a pretty smart idea. Mr. Overregulation, we should keep licensing and drug testing. We need to keep the FDA. But if we were to set up a shop and say, hey, I'll go ahead and stitch you up, Robbie. I'll stitch you up for $200 because I'm going to charge you $100 an hour. And then the supplies are going to cost me about $30. And, I'm going to go ahead and make, my $70 on my materials. Right. And I wanted to do that. I can't, they don't allow that in America. If you go to the border to Mexico, you can get any type of surgery from, quite frankly, probably an American trained doctor for fractions of the price. So I don't know,
well, John, that's what I basically said earlier before you thought I was talking in circles. No, I said the healthcare system is not a free market because it's regulated by the insurance companies and the government. Do you understand? If it was a free market and it was under capitalism, then you basically would say, we're not going to basically ask the insurance companies to dictate what these services cost after you've been treated, right? Let me ask you, it's basically, if you want to go back to LASIK surgery, right? Or let's say to a primary care doctor, you can't call a list of 10, 15 doctors in your local area and say, hey, how much is a physical? They're going to be like, I don't know how much it's going to cost. I have to bill you first. And then the insurance company will then tell me, because they don't know until they process the claim. The claim comes back with a piece of information saying what was done, why it was approved, or why it was not approved. Right? This is the only part in business here in the healthcare business that actually exists. Anywhere else, you can basically look at the pricing before you purchase something, before you make your decision on any other item you're buying, regardless of what it is. In healthcare, it's the opposite. You get the service first, then they tell you you're at the will of the insurance company, and that's only if you understand how the insurance works, if you understand, if you know what a deductible is, a premium is, if you understand what's actually covered, because the wording gets very technical in terms of what can be covered, if it's medication related, if it's services related, if it's a surgery related, et cetera, et cetera. It goes back to my example. Would you go into a restaurant, order the meal, eat it, and then ask the person, or no, would you go into a restaurant, order a meal, and ask the person, how much does this meal cost? And they say, I don't know, eat your meal, and then we'll come back with the bill. Would you do that? No, it's insanity. Right. It's absolute insanity. So I'm saying the way I think you can actually make it competitive and actually cut these prices down is to essentially remove the insurance out of it in some way. I don't think entirely. It's a very slippery slope, because as you start telling doctors' offices, well, the cost of my services is X, someone else is going to see that and say, well, I'm going to charge Y. And eventually you get into a bidding war, just like we've seen in the free market, where you're bringing the best service you can for as cheap as you can make it to offer to the community. right? However, the other side to that, the other downside to that is like, that's if, I think realistically, if you have a good job or you're generally healthy. The problem is like, if you're someone who has chronic issues, whether it's from birth or something you develop later in life, you're going to be going to the doctor more frequently, and maybe you can't dish out those bills. It's like, how many times can I keep eating takeout every fucking 2 weeks, right? It's like there's a checks and balances.
I mean, yeah, it's a copay, right? Like, if you got to come out of pocket, for physical therapy or for whatever, 40, $50 every time, like that's going to add up, especially if you're on a fixed income, for the elderly, and I don't want to get too deep into this piece, but it's like, I truly believe my grandmother would still be here today, if we had universal health care, because she was denied over and over again for 24-hour coverage, even though she needed help 24 hours a day. They deemed her, ineligible for that. And then in the middle of the night, she got up and fell, and that was that. So it's like, I just think that they're as an American, I believe that health insurance should be a right. I do not believe that it should be something that is subject to a marketplace. I believe that it's an inalienable right. And, earlier when we started this off, you mentioned, well, isn't it nice to talk about free healthcare? That's funny, because nothing is fucking free. And anybody who, as an adult, can understand that. When we talk about universal healthcare, we're not talking about it being just some phantom grandpa that pays for this coming out of some phantom trust fund. No, this comes out of your pre-tax dollars, similar to, and like Social Security, similar to Medicare. We pay into these things, and we fully intend for them to be there, Mr. President-elect, when we retire as millennials, in 30 fucking 40 years, God willing, like who knows at this rate. That is what we should be paying into. They've already fucked us, and we no longer have pensions. That's subject to the free market, right? Pensions have evaporated. Now we got 401ks. It's relying on us to save for our future, because there is no loyalty, among corporations and to their employees, and there certainly isn't any loyalty, with the government and the people of this country anymore.
One thing you're forgetting, we'll get to Rob, and I'll add another point when Rob's done. But if you have a universal healthcare system, you do not expect to either get the best quality out of that system, let alone as quickly of a service you want to. In the system we have, as much as we can gripe and bitch over it, like if you want to see a doctor tomorrow, you can do that right now. If you have a universal healthcare system like they have in Canada, you may not get to see a doctor for the first.
That's a red herring, dude.
What do you mean? Herring. You don't know the definition of red herring.
Red herring means it's a fucking thing. It's a fucking thing that you want people to go look at and take away from the argument.
No, it's not the argument. No, it's not.
It's a complete phantom. And let me tell you why. Okay. There is no proof outside of Canada that anybody waits any longer for any type of service when they need it.
No, that's not true.
Dude, if you break a fucking arm, Anthony, they don't send you home for a month. If you got a wart on your back, they send you home for a month.
Yes, there's a difference between the emergency room, but how many times can you actually keep going to the emergency room for every little nook and cranny? We're talking about, let's say you actually go to your doctor, the doctor deems you, man, you actually have joint issues, you need knee replacements, you need hip replacements. You're not going to die today, you're not going to die tomorrow, but guess what? I can't see you. We can do this in 8 months. Whereas somebody today,
sign me up. It's fucking covered. I don't have to pay for it.
You're gonna suffer. You're gonna suffer for 8 months to get to that doctor.
What do you mean you're gonna suffer? Like you've been suffering. I don't know. Like Robbie, what do you think on that?
Go ahead, Rob. Go ahead.
No, I mean I don't know the stats on how long people wait for doctors, but I'll say that if I want to see a specialist, yeah, it could take time. There's certain issues out there that, if you have a very unique situation or a very specialized case and you need someone who has a certain area of expertise, you could be waiting a month or two for an appointment. Does that depend on where you live? Probably. I mean, living in New York City or around the New York City area, sure, I have access to probably any doctor that I could possibly want. There's also 8 million plus people that live here. So there could be a wait time. But what I kind of wanted to go to is, on the other side of your argument, why is medical billing as complicated as it is, because you can put through a claim and God forbid there's one single code that is wrong. It could be a digit, a character, anything, and your claim is going to get auto denied. Medical billing has become so complicated that people are getting denied and it's really on them to turn around, investigate their own claim, talk with their doctors, adjust the billing, adjust the coding, resubmit it. It is a huge headache. And if people don't know really how the system works and what to look for when you're trying to get a claim paid, and it's by the fault of the doctor's office by putting in the wrong code,
right?
How is that how does that even happen?
Yeah.
Like, why is it so complicated?
It's listen, again, as I told you, healthcare is not an easy industry to just look at a blueprint and say, oh, there's the problem, let's just fix it. It's a lot of different things between people who don't take care of themselves from start to finish. You can blame it big pharma, who's now actually pushing medications out there that actually people are taking, which then adds into their medical concerns, which asks them to go back to the doctor frequently for either more medication or they're having complications on this medication. You know what I mean? It's a lot of different things. And, now you can also get to the fraud where doctors who got into this thought they can game the system, who ruined it for everybody else. That's another thing. So now you have like Medicare and all these insurances writing very specific line items that says like, this is the guide. If it goes outside of our regulations, the claim gets denied. Especially if the office fucks up on it. I mean, at that point, you can actually request the office go back and refile it for you and see where the issues happen. But it's very common because like a lot of these rules and regulations are actually been written up by doctors, right? Like they're trying to find out like how they can make it more black and white versus everything kind of being gray a little bit. But they're finding, even as they're trying to make it more objectively left or more objectively right, they're finding that people are still either going to the doctors more frequently, asking for medications that they don't necessarily need. The doctors are prescribed because the doctor at the end of the day doesn't care about what the insurance company says. If they're going to recommend something, it's not going to kill you and you won't complain. They're going to do it. You know why? Because they have an obligation to the patient to say, okay, what's the matter with you? Oh, your arm hurts. I tried medication A. Okay, we're going to try
the Hippocratic Oath,
right?
It's the Hippocratic Oath.
Here's another example, and I'm going to tread lightly on this because I know this could be a sensitive topic, but let's say like birth control. Here's a perfect example, right? I used to work I've seen people who worked on that billing side, like when they look at what insurance will cover for birth control, right? If the doctor makes a recommendation, what the insurance company says they will pay for that birth control, right? That's what the patient has to get. And yes, they can appeal and say, well, I don't want this because I claim I'm having, it causes me distress here or causes this, whatever, and they can appeal it, but the doctor then must submit those notes on in, and the insurance is going to let no, like we're not going to basically pay for this higher tier birth control because you just want it. There's no evidence that says that you need it. So what they're going to do, they're going to recommend that you go the alternative approach because one, it's not going to kill you. Two, it's doing the same thing. Three, there's no evidence that says you need this higher birth control, right? That's an example of what I've seen and heard of. But again, it's basically that.
All right. Do you remember? And like, this is one of my favorite types of birth control.
Oh, you took it yourself.
Do you remember that night that I moved in my senior year to the apartments with Glennie, and you came up to visit us?
Are you talking to me or Rob?
To you, Anthony.
Oh. Yes, I do remember that. I think I vaguely remember, but yes, I do remember.
You vaguely remember. Okay.
Yeah.
So that night, Anthony and I, a bunch of our friends, we're all celebrating, drinking, having fun, just moved into our new apartment, me and my buddy in Albany. So, Anthony and a bunch of the guys come up to visit. And this is across from RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. So, a lot of very smart nerds, there's some fucking nerds over there, and a couple beauties among them. And I think that these beauties got a hold of the look on our faces. They came to hang out with us. And Anthony and I were vying for this young mamacita. We'll say that. We move into the hot tub. And let's just say the next morning, as we're all sitting in there, somebody lifts their fingers out of the water, and lo and behold, there's a Nuva ring that apparently somebody was able to get out of that young mamacita. I think that was the icing on the cake for Anthony's first and only trip to Albany. I had never seen a ring before, so that was interesting to me, and now I think I prefer that.
Yeah, I think we had a friend of ours who actually, can you believe this, folks? This kid we knew did a cannonball in a jacuzzi, a probably 4x4 jacuzzi, and actually all the water went out of the jacuzzi and everyone had walked out. We're not going to mention this name though, but yeah.
Awesome. All right. How we want to wrap this up?
Well, here's how I'm going to wrap it up on the health stuff. So here's the thing, boys, is that there's a guy, his name is actually Dan McLaughlin from the National Review, and he actually says something that I've even said about a healthcare system, is that there's 3 types of things you're going to get from it, right? You can either make it universal, affordable, or it's going to be more qualitative, right? You're not getting all 3. You maybe get 2 out of 3, right? For example, and I think in Australia, like they have a really good it's affordable, it's universal, but the quality is like In Switzerland, for example, you can get it's universal, you have the great quality, but it's not as affordable. So you really got to ask yourself, like, if we're talking healthcare and you can only pick for those 3, which one do you want? You don't get all 3. You only get 2. One has to be sacrificed for the other.
Universal and qualitative. Because universal means everybody gets it, and then we get quality care.
No, but it's not going to be affordable then.
It is affordable because it's universal, and universal means everyone gets it, and it's included in your fucking taxes.
No, universal is in like we can treat you whenever we want to, meaning like I can basically get healthcare.
That's not what universal healthcare means.
That's what I'm classifying it under, meaning you can get it whenever you want.
Well, then no, I refuse to answer your question.
No, you have to answer the question. It's one of those you get one. It's one of those like you got a knife and a gun. Which one do you want to kill yourself with? This is where Anthony does. Like he backs us into a fucking corner, and there's no answer to give because they're illogical. Because there's no right or wrong answer, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's a serious question. You have to pick which system do you want to live in. There's no system that's perfect.
Yeah, you're making this up.
I'm not making it up.
An artificial box.
No, I'm not. This is John trying to do more word salad, man. I'm telling you, it's a real thing. You get, all right, you know what? Rob, what do you think? Because John's not going to clearly answer the question. If you had to pick 2 out of the 3, which system would you want to live in?
I know for a fact that I would want quality.
Quality, okay.
And I would want access to it.
Access. Okay. So then you want the quality and the access, but maybe not so much affordable. So therefore, like if you can get the best care that can cure the chronic disease you have right now, you'll pay whatever they're asking for, you'll pay it. And whether the insurance covers it somewhat, all the way, you have to pay a little bit more, you're willing to pay that, is what I'm saying, right? So let's say the insurance meets you 50 way, you'll pay the other extra 50%, more or less.
You're putting all these extra things in there. He's like, earmark. You are a quintessential healthcare worker. Adding all these earmarks to the bill.
That's how healthcare works. That's what I'm saying. So you're willing to pay more to get the best quality out of it. That's basically what I'm saying. And that's good. That's the system you want. That's what Switzerland has.
That's not what he said. Is that what you said?
Yes, he did. He wants a quality. He wants it access to it. But it's affordability.
Yeah, but you can't look. Everybody has a price. Like you can't just, I'm going to write off affordability because I heavily lean towards access and quality. Like, of course, affordability is going to factor in. I can't just say that I'm not going to pick that of the 3. If I can only pick 2, it's everyone's situation is going to be different. And, luckily, knock on wood, like I haven't needed to fork over a lot of money for health insurance. So it's hard for me to say, like, if tomorrow I have a diagnosis, which is going to cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars and, medical care, that would be a gripe that I would have. And I would say, I want affordability and I want the best coverage. So it's hard to say because I haven't really faced all those different situations.
Yeah. And I only asked that question because here's where I think we can wrap up, because we can say this for another conversation, is that I even have doctor friends who even believe like some of the healthcare concerns that are deemed are incurable or not treatable can be actually treated and cured. But the unfortunate thing is that businesses like healthcare insurance companies and big pharma make money treating diseases than they do actually curing the diseases. And this kind of comes down to the fact of like why it's like, well, yeah, if you want for it to be affordable and access to it, right? The quality, that's where the quality is in sacrifice, because they're just basically keeping you alive for as long as they can because they can keep billing you and billing you and billing you. That's where we say, that's what I'm saying. The quality is in sacrifice in that regard, if that makes sense, right? So
Yeah,
that's something you can
I mean,
do with.
I guess this is another enigma over
Yeah.
here. So
Healthcare. Healthcare is extremely complicated, very complicated thing. It's very
it
polarizing.
seems like America's the only place that hasn't fucking figured it out, though, Anthony. So don't know what to do there. But Robbie, we appreciate your time. Welcome to the crew. We knight you.
Been
a
an
member
honor,
of the
fellas.
Bigger and Louder team. It's been real, folks. Rob, you have any final thoughts for us?
Actually, let me take it here. I will say that what you guys are doing, I would say at some point, every friend group across the world has said that we should start a podcast. And you know what? You guys fucking did it. So I tip my hat to you guys.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Beast. We love you. We'll have you back anytime you're available. Anytime the two rascals aren't jumping all over you, man.
Yep.
Yeah. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Take care, everybody.